So welcome back. I'm just going to go through a few simple steps on how I breed my birds, how I get them in condition, and just the basic steps for getting them to breed. I get a lot of questions on how I do it so simply, but I don't do anything. It's all the birds, so let's do it. So basically the first thing, number one, is the pigeon health. The birds need to be in good condition. They need to be happy, and they need just to be healthy in general, because once they're healthy, they're going to produce good eggs and raise good babies. So make sure they're healthy, because you're only going to get 1 or 2 rounds out of them if they're healthy. But you can tell this hen here, she's you can see how good condition she is in. This is her second round, so she'll probably slow down after this. And this is his first round, so he's sort of a bit wear and tear, early fatherhood type things, but you just got to keep up the good food and don't stress them out too much and they'll be fine. So just keep them in good health. It's pretty simple. They'll do the rest. So number 2, pigeons are quite smart, but they are quite nervous at the same time. So you definitely want to have a safe and secure place for them to nest. Generally, you probably won't have as big as areas as for breeding them in, but yeah, we won't worry about that too much. But say for this example, I've kept them up quite high. They don't typically like being on the ground. They like to be up as high as possible and like to be reasonably dark and sheltered, but they also like to have a good, keep a good eye on what's going around, because they do get very nervous. This hen's very nervous. But that's just one of the important things. Keep the babies and nest up off the ground, away from drafts. Try and keep it a little bit dark like it is in here, not smashed in the sun. They don't really like that, but if you can sort of get a setup like this, then it's pretty good. Or you can build little nest boxes. You just want to keep it dark and secure, keep them comfortable, and they'll just keep pumping out little babies for you. So another one is nest bowl. You need a good quality nest bowl. You can see these are just the plastic ones. These are actually quite good. They've got quite a bit of depth. So if you are using nesting material, eggs aren't going to fly out, etc. I've used smaller nest bowls, and I've actually had a chick fall out and get cold and die. So make sure you got a nice deep one like this. This is actually a proper pigeon one. It's made out of plastic. It's got air holes underneath, so air can circulate in through the nest, which keeps it dry, keeps the mold bacteria out. And this one's pretty easy to clean. I give this a scrape out every day. So basically all this is just all the poo from the last 24 hours. So I'll give that a clean shortly, and pretty simple. I can just move it, no problems at all. And these actually have a nest liner in it, but I'll show you that one, a clean one, so don't have to disturb these guys too much. But these pigeon ones are pretty good. You can see that the chicks fit in there perfectly, so it's designed for that. Super easy to clean too. Just junk it in a bucket, let it soak, and then give it a scrub, disinfect it, and bam, you're back into it again. So next one is water. I just have one of these little plastic containers I've reused for water. I probably change that twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. If you've got a bigger one, you can do it less, but again, very important to change that out every day, especially at this age where the chicks are now. They'll smash through that water, so you need to make sure, because especially when they're bulk feeding them, they need the water to soften all those seeds, help it digest. So remember, fresh water all the time. Okay, so step number 4 is food. Good food, and lots of it, is like a big necessity for these birds, because they pretty much don't stop pecking, especially when the squeakers get to the age of the ones in this cage. Is that hen and that cockbird will just be feeding them all day, and mum and dad need to also digest some of this food and keep themselves in reasonably good health and condition. So you need to make sure there's always food in the cage. What I've got basically, this is my mix for just everyday feeding, which you can see it's got a bit of everything in there. There's a large part of wheat. There's actually pigeon pellets in there too, and that's basically just for the birds all the time. There's quite a lot of peas in there, but when I find when the parents are feeding chicks, they prefer mainly this mix, which I've made. It's probably a little bit heavier in safflower than most people would agree on, but I actually mix this with this, which you can see in here, because the chicks grow quite quickly, so you get a lot of fat. There's actually a lot of racing pigeon pellets in here, these properly made little ones, which are here, and these are, oh, there it is there actually. Let's find some better ones. Here they are. So these little guys are actually properly made for pigeons. They are not like chicken pellets where everything's sort of mashed up and then compressed. They just compress all the seeds at the same time. So this is just compressed seeds, so that is super easy for the chicks to digest and grow a lot quicker, a lot faster. So I put a bit in there. I definitely need to add some more into this, but I need to get this down. So you just got to watch your birds, see what they're picking out, because otherwise you're going to end up with a lot of seeds that they will not eat. And I know a lot of people say, oh, if you leave it in there long enough they will eat it. I've tried that, and my birds just like to leave wheat and things like that there, and they will not touch it. So I like to make sure there's always food there. That's number one. Lots of good fatty, high protein goodness for them, especially like peas. Peas are high in protein. These little white ones, the safflowers, are high in fat, and all that stuff is fantastic for building the blocks of those little chicks to help them grow pretty quick and healthy. So lots of food. It's pretty simple. Lots of good food. Have a variety of seeds, and pretty simple. Make sure you've got good quality, clean seed. But apart from that, feeding side's pretty simple. Just make sure you've always got food in there, because if the chicks aren't getting fed enough, their toes will go retarded. I've seen that happen before. So make sure you don't let that happen. So what I like to do with my seed is, especially with these little chicks, I probably put in like maybe 1 teaspoon of pink mineral powder. This stuff's pretty good. Heaps of companies make it. It's all pretty much the same. It's just got probiotics, calcium, all that kind of stuff in it. Heaps of minerals, so that's good for them. Then I actually just mix it in with the seed. I always try and make sure that my seed's got like a little light dusting of that. A lot of people will put this in a little container like this as well. Just pour the mineral powder in there, but my birds, not a huge fan of it. I've never been able to get them to eat that, so I go for this method, so they're always getting it. And the next thing you'll want is a reasonably good feeding container. I just picked this one up off eBay. Main thing of this is they're not flicking seeds out and wasting it, so that's why I have this one, because they can't flick seeds out of it. This thing they can just flick seeds out, so get something like this. And just throw it in there. My birds will smash through this pretty quick. They'll probably go through this in nearly a day maybe, with those 2 chicks at this age. And there'll just be a week left, so let's go give them this. So I just like to sit that on the ground. Pretty simple. You're not going to get any wastage in that. You can see there is a bit on the floor here. That is from one of these little containers I had, but now I've gone back to this sort of setup because, yeah, this wastes way too much, which you can see. They flick out what they don't want. So what we're going to do in the future is we're changing this cage very shortly, so we're going to do some improvements. So hit subscribe, check that out too, but let's move on to the next bit. And another one is grit. This is very important. Let's have a look. So I basically just have a little container like this of grit. I only put a small amount in there, just because they do flick it out and waste a lot of it, but I do replace it every morning or every afternoon, depends where I am. But you can see with this one, there's some very important things in there. Let's try and get it nice and focused, which it's not. You've got your clay in there for helping break down things like peas and all the little white bits. See, there's a little shell there. That's all calcium, so it's all broken down shells. That is super important for when the hens are starting to produce eggs inside them, because you would definitely want a very strong shell. So grit needs to always be in there. It's helpful for the producing strong, good quality eggs, and just general digestion of the mothers and fathers. And also they'll feed the chicks this too, so it's going to help the chicks digest their food when they get to the point where they are actually feeding them whole seeds and not being fed crop milk and things like that. So you definitely need to make sure that there is grit in there at all times. You don't need a massive big bowl, just a little one like this. Replace it every day or every 2 days if you want, just depending. My white hen, she'll just sit here all day and pick at this. She just loves it for some reason. She's a weirdo, but her parents are like that, so that's fine. I just buy these 10 kilo bags. This is proper formulated pigeon one. Back a long time ago when I was a kid, we actually used to gather the grit from the beach and just, boil it in hot water, just sterilize it and then give it to the birds. Same thing, it's full of shells and rocks and small things like that, so that also works. That's free. And you could probably use other things depending what's in your area, but this stuff is fantastic, especially made for pigeons, so it's definitely worth getting some of that. And I'm just going to touch base on this again. This is that pink mineral powder. It's just got a whole bunch of good stuff in it. You can see here that you've got vitamin A, vitamin D, E, K, B1, B2, B6, blah, 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 blah. And you can see the amount of stuff that it's got in it. Oh, there's seaweed in there. Interesting. But that's a pretty brief look at what's in it. And like my birds, for example, they don't get the opportunity to walk around and pick around the ground, so that's why this is handy to have with grit. They can get all their minerals that they need, and it's just a very fine powder, but it's fantastic stuff. Should always be there somewhere for the birds or putting on their seed, especially with breeding, because it is very resource intensive on the birds. They need as much energy as they can, because those chicks grow quick and they require a lot of food and puts a lot of stress on the adults. So definitely have some form of vitamins and minerals and calcium and all that kind of stuff. They definitely need it. But that's just a very basic introduction to how I keep my birds in reasonably good condition, enough to to get them to breed whenever they want. They don't muck around, they get into it pretty quick. So as long as the birds are in good condition and they're happy and safe and there's food there and water, they do the rest. Pigeons, they just can't keep their hands off each other. They're like teenagers, so just remember those few steps. Drop some comments down below if you've got some other tips. Definitely want to hear from you guys. See you later.